There's actually a lot of y'all here tonight. Do you guys remember what we were talking about last month?
I do.
Okay, go ahead, Belle. Yeah, mental health. How many of you guys were here for any of those services? Okay. There's a good amount of you guys. So if you guys were there, you guys are used to seeing me speak just up here for service leading, giving you guys announcements, embarrassing you guys if it's your first time. Also, I will trip up my words. So just go with it. Go with the flow tonight. So you guys are used to seeing me up here or on worship, but I got the opportunity tonight to speak to you guys again. Some of y'all heard me preach on Sunday. And so this is kind of going to look a little bit like that, but I kind of want to go a little bit deeper tonight. So we always hear about mental health. I feel like we always hear about mental health in the setting of school or in the setting of social media. All those cute little pastel-colored Instagram posts that are like, mental health, what is it? 7 signs that you need to improve your mental health. And like all of those really cute little Instagram posts that I know all of y'all see. But mental health in the church, I think, is very differently defined. And something that I really enjoyed talking to a lot of y'all about was that we don't really talk about it much in the church. I know I felt like that. I know a lot of people I know felt like that we don't really hear a lot about it, but what I've come to realize is because it's just defined differently. So in school and to the world, I'm going to call the world anything that does not align with what God says. So the world is what the doctors who don't know God are going to tell you about yourself, what society is going to tell you, what your school books might tell you sometimes, which I'm not saying school books aren't right. Please do your math homework. Please do your history homework. Please do your homework. That is not what I'm trying to tell y'all. What I'm trying to say is that the world is going to tell you that there's something wrong with you. The world is going to tell you that if you're struggling with your mental health, that this is a problem that you have, and it's something you own, and it's irreversible. But what I want to talk about tonight is what that actually is and what that actually looks like. And I'm going to share a bit about my own story in that. So mental health and mental struggles in the church are an attack that the enemy is giving on you. Where a lot of mental health struggles, you can see it in like psychology and psychological disorders that can be like schizophrenia or like psychoticism. I don't know that word. We're just going to go along with it. But like psychopaths, that's what you think of when you think of like mental issues, right? But the world will also define depression and anxiety as mental issues, right? They're going to tell you that they're irreversible, that you need drugs to fix it, and that's it. That's who you are, that's a part of who you are. But in the church, something that we often emphasize is we can be healed by anything. If you listen to almost any worship song, I just put on a worship song and you'll hear nothing is impossible through him. God is the God who loves us. God is the God who heals us, right? So when we think about mental health, what we need to look at it as, and I'm not saying that there can't be chemical imbalances that are causing these like mental struggles. That is a real thing, and if that is a real thing, definitely go to your doctor, but also first pray. Before you do anything, the first step you should do before going to the world is praying, right? So one thing that I was praying about, because I didn't share this the last time I was speaking, that God just randomly gave to me in the middle of when I wasn't paying attention to my Bible class was, man, it's a 2-hour class. I'm telling you guys, I don't have a long enough attention span. But the devil is going to do whatever he can to make you forget who God made you to be. The devil will sit there and tell you, you can't do this. You're not enough. You're depressed. You're sad all the time. That means there's something wrong with you. And then he'll strategically place those factors around you that are telling you, oh, well, there's something wrong with you, right? But in reality, this is an attack that the devil is putting on us. When I first was asked to do this, I was a little bit nervous. I'm not going to lie. I think even Pastor Franklin was a little bit nervous. I don't know. We were just having this first serious conversation where he's like, if you don't want to do this, I'm like, oh, shoot. Like, do I want to do this? Because mental health is something that I've struggled with for a long time. It's been hard for me because I oftentimes will take a hold of those things that the world is telling me I am and identify with them, right? So since I was longer than I can remember, I've struggled with panic and anxiety. So if you have ever heard of psychology, there's a lot of different types of anxiety. There's different categories of depression and all that stuff. And mine is, I laughed at my own analogy that I used a couple Sundays ago. But it's like somebody just flipped a switch. Somebody kind of pressed this red panic button, and it just goes absolutely crazy for like 3 hours, and you have no idea why. That's kind of what's going on in my head. So something really, really small could trigger that, and I will go into something where I can describe it as like this impending sense of doom. And I've struggled with this for as long as I can remember. It happens at youth camps, it happened at a lock-in, it's happened on planes. So this is something that I've struggled with, and for the longest time, I always got so angry at God, being like, God, everyone's getting healing. When's my turn? Like, I'm seeing all these people getting healed, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's been like 10 years. But that really messed with me. And for about 3 to 4 years, I struggled a lot with depression. And a lot of that was just due to the fact that I looked at that, I saw what the world called it, and I was like, yeah, I have that. I saw what everybody else wanted to describe as there's something wrong with you, you have an issue, and I was like, yeah, that's mine. I took that on myself. And this really crazy thing that your mind does is it'll actually believe what you start saying. It'll believe what you start thinking. It's kind of what hypochondriacs do, is like if you think you're sick, even if you're not sick, you will start having the symptoms of being sick. So I took on that depression and I made it mine, which I got deliverance from, right, at the age of 15, 16. I'm 18. I'm not like 15. But bottom line, it's a real thing. And that's why it's so important for us to be talking about this tonight. And if we don't have a timer on there, I feel like I'm going to go like 8 years longer than I should. But growing up in church, it was always super hard for me because I'm like, don't let them see it, 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 right? And then I'd go cry in the back. Like I'd go up on stage and I'm like, let's go, Jesus. Like I just started crying because there's so many things, and that's why I'm so excited to be able to talk to you guys about this, because we don't have to be ashamed of those struggles and issues if we have them. That being said, don't make it a part of your identity, because that's not you. My anxiety is not me, not even my anxiety. The struggle that I have, the fact that I struggle with anxiety isn't mine. See, when I keep on saying my anxiety, it's because throughout all those years, I called it mine. I made it mine. I said, I'm never getting healed from this. Might as well start taking medication. Like, I'm never getting healed from this. That's because I made it mine. So a couple of these points that I'm going to give to you guys are going to seem super basic, but I want to apply them to mental health because I feel like we always hear them in a setting of like doing good and following what God tells you to do, but instead, I want to apply this to your mental health and your mental struggles that you go through. The first one is go to God. It's simple as that, 3 words. The first point. Not the second point, not the 8th point. It's the first point is go to God, because before you go to the doctor, before you go to school, before you go to people, go to God. Because if you start to go to God, He's going to tell you who you really are, not what the world tells you you are, right? I feel like so many times we forget who God has made us to be because, like I said before, the devil will do whatever he can to make you forget that. Whether that's put people in your life who you start listening and feeding into what they have to say. I know one of the biggest reasons for my insecurities as a junior high and high schooler was I genuinely believed that there was something wrong with me because people told me there was. I would have people constantly asking me, like, Mia, you have like some mental stuff? I'm like, I don't think so. But then I slowly began to believe it because all they would do is say, oh, you're just dumb, like, you're a little too stupid, or little comments by people I believed were my friends who were feeding into this idea that there was something wrong with me mentally. That what was going on in my life mentally was way too much because I wasn't going to God, I was going to my friends for who I was. That's so dangerous. It can be really hard because enough lies in a human mind can become a truth. I feel like the most frequently brought up example of that is when everyone starts talking about Hitler. Enough lies, an entire army is going to wipe out an entire race because that lie was fed into them enough times. Now, I'm not talking about like genocide scale here. I'm talking about in your mind who your friends are, ungodly friends could be pouring into you rather than going to God for who you really are. It was really hard for me because I started believing those over what God was telling me over in the Bible. I remember this one time, I still think about it sometimes, and I ask God for forgiveness. I know He's already forgiven me. I just touched my mic. But at one point, I remember sitting here in the loft after a worship service. I had gone upstairs. I must have been 14, and I started crying, just being like, I couldn't feel worship. There's something wrong with me. I'm so depressed. I'm so full of anxiety. Like, this is who I am, and it's never going to end. And what the Bible is telling me, I don't feel is true. And I remember Pastor D came and tried talking to me, and the lies were so much louder than the truth in that moment. The lies were telling me to tell Pastor D. I was like, no, you're wrong. That is, I don't know if y'all have met Pastor D. Don't do it. Do not say that to Pastor D. I still, to this day, am like, does she remember that? Like, does she remember me kind of yelling at her? Because I ask God for forgiveness about that a lot. Because that was all that was on my mind is I was like, no, the Bible's wrong. I said the Bible was wrong. It took me a long time to actually be able to go to God. And I'm telling you these stories because I know a lot of the times it is really hard sometimes to give it to God. Like, I'm not going to sit here as a youth leader and pretend like I've always gone straight to God. But I can tell you that the moment that I did, it changed everything for me. I can tell you the first time that I truly went to God in a circumstance of pure panic and fear, I prayed, God, give me peace. And just like that, there was no hint of fear. The person that I had been bullied by for years was staying with me. And I had so much fear in that moment, but I was just coasting along with God in that moment. Something I never thought could actually happen because God can give you that supernatural peace that nobody else can. God can give you that supernatural peace that those drugs for anxiety, they might take out the fear, but it might also take out the joy. It might also take out those amazing feelings, and that's why I never wanted to go. That's why my family and I never went to the doctors, because we knew that as soon as I went in, what would they tell me? That there's something wrong with me permanently. They would tell me that I need drugs in order to be okay, but hey, I'm drug-free. And I'm doing great. I kind of made this analogy, and me and Alicia were kind of laughing about it earlier. It's just kind of like spicy feelings. Like, it's a little bit, a little scary. Kind of burns a little bit, but I wouldn't trade that fear for the amount of joy that God has given me ever. Oh man, I lost my train of thought. Because when we don't go to God and we're constantly listening to those voices, when we're constantly listening to the world, it'll make us want to give up. I know it made me want to give up a lot for years. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I haven't, because those mental struggles that I dealt with, the things that I took in and made my own, because I wasn't going to God, it brought me to an extreme. And that's why I'm up here, is I want to help you guys find these resources and these things to do so you don't get to the point where I was at. I lived an amazing life. I have the most amazing parents, the most amazing siblings, but don't tell them I said that because it's going to go to their head. I know they're both sitting there. They're like, I know I'm a good sister. But regardless of that, I had an amazing life, an amazing situation, amazing resources, and yet I still wanted to give up due to nothing except for the fact that the devil instilled all those lies into me, that I wasn't worth it, that I wasn't worth getting that help from other people, and I wasn't worth asking God for help. This one verse that comes to my mind every single time I struggle or I feel myself going back into my depression, or not my depression, see? That's what the world will tell you. That's what I have done for a long time. And so I'm even now still reversing that. The depression that I had gone through, even when I feel it starting to come back, this verse, it's Psalms 120, verse 1. And it says, I call on the Lord in my distress, and he answered me. One little verse changed my outlook on reaching out to God, and I'm so grateful for that, because God is a God of healing. God is the only one who can heal you. And he wants to. Just like that verse says, he answers you in those times of distress. You just have to listen. Go to God. Going to God can look like a lot of different things. Pray. Please pray. Above all else, pray to God. Have that relationship with him. Because if you can establish that relationship, you'll hear him call out to you when you need it. And you can call out to him when you need it. Yep, those are the right words. My go-to is always praying and worship. You can ask Maddie, she's sitting right here, how many times I've ever had an anxiety attack and I didn't listen to worship music? Was none. That was my way of when I couldn't make out the words to pray to God, those words are speaking into me. My second point is find people. So that point is number 2, and I specifically ordered them in this way because right after you find God, because you need to find God first, find godly people. Because like I said earlier, the devil's going to tell you that there's something to be ashamed of, that there's something wrong with you, and that'll drive you away from the godly people. It'll drive you away from wanting to seek help from them. If I would have reached out at the age of 11, at the age of 12, I guarantee you, I don't regret anything that I've done. I don't regret anything that I've gone through, but there's some things that I wish I would have known so I wouldn't have put myself through that. I did some things to myself, and due to that, it impacted my relationship with my family because I refused to reach out. And I internalized everything. All I was listening to was the world and Satan. Man, is that not a fun place to be? You find godly people. When you can't hear the word of God, they will tell it to you. I can't tell you how many times I've been sitting there, and this happened a few weeks ago as I was so overwhelmed and I was crying in the car, and I called Maddie and she told me exactly what I needed to hear, but I didn't want to listen to her in that moment. And then the next day, I called her. I was like, gosh, you were right. Because she knew exactly what to say because God had told her to tell it to me. Realizing how right she was, it kind of was annoying because I was like, nah, you're right. But that's what God will do when you do follow those godly people. When you do invite them into your life, is they'll kind of help you stand up in that situation. They'll help hold you up. They'll help pour into you the things that you can't do on your own sometimes. Is sometimes when you're struggling and you're trying to go to God, but you can't feel, you don't know what's going on, you don't know if you really have grasped it. They're like, Mia, he's right there. He loves you. He thinks you're worthy. He thinks you're strong because God told you you're strong, but because you can't hear it, they're there. See, my anxiety never went away because I had people in my life, but it really helped. When I do still struggle with anxiety. I do still struggle with panic. That's one of those things where I was like, I'm a little bit nervous to be talking about this, is because I do still struggle with it. This isn't a past thing. Like when I did struggle with depression for those years, I overcame it. God helped me overcome within an instant, supernatural healing from that. Joy like I've never felt before, but with anxiety, I still haven't experienced the full healing, and I know it's there. It's just when. And until that when, I still battle with that. And when I battle with that, you can bet that Maddie's getting a phone call. I can't tell you, just a few nights ago, I called Maddie. I was like, hey, are you awake? She's like, of course. And in all of those moments, I love the fact that I was able to speak about friendship with Maddie a few months ago. It's May, and it was in February. We got to speak on friendship, and I almost cried when I was talking about it. I think you cried. But sincerely, with all of my heart, I believe that the godly given people in your life are there to support you and to pour into you. Because in those times when it's so cloudy in your mind that you can't hear God, they're going to be there to make sure you don't fall. And I could not tell you where I would be right now without my best friend. I could tell you that I might not still be here without my best friend. Because godly given people are God-given. They're there because God decided, hey, I know that you're going through this thing, so here is somebody who can help. And they're going to pour into you the things that I have for you. That being said, godly people do not replace God. Do not get that twisted. Do not think you can only go to people and just ignore God. I can tell you right now that will not work. I've tried it. It doesn't work. I can tell you from personal experience that the only source of healing is God. But until you reach that source of healing, they will be your biggest cheerleaders. I can tell you that when I was about to speak, and right after I spoke, I was talking to Pastor Franklin, and he's like, we've always believed in you. I'm like, don't cry. Because they're your biggest cheerleaders. Find people, find leaders. If you have struggled with your mental health, I can guarantee you I can either give what God has for you, what God has for me to tell you, or I can point you in a leader who can. Because that's why we're here. Yeah. We're not here to replace God. We're here to help minister God to you. So they're speaking God into your life. So don't get that twisted. Don't get it twisted, guys. God is above all else. God is number one. But you still need godly people in your life because there's always going to be people who aren't godly. But find those godly people because I guarantee you're going to know the difference. When you have ungodly people and you have godly people, you're going to know what's the truth. I had my friend tell me the other day, she's like, I know I can ask my other friends this. She's like, you're the only opinion I currently trust out of all of them because I know what they're going to tell me to do is the wrong decision. And I was like, yeah, go ahead, ask me the question. She asked me and I was like, yeah, you knew what I was going to say. You knew it in your heart, but I'm going to tell you anyways that this is what aligns with the Word of God. So they're going to tell you that. Maddie will call me out. Maddie and my family, my sisters, my mom, my dad will call me out because they know what aligns with the Word of God. And as annoying as it can be, you still do need people to speak those godly things into you. I have like 5 minutes, but I do want to leave you with a couple of things. My keyboard just attached to this podium. That's fun. Everyone is going to struggle, whether or not that's with mental health. Don't be ashamed of it. The whole reason why we're here in church is to learn and to grow, and also to give the struggles that we have up to the Lord so we can grow our relationship with him. Like, our relationship with God is not dependent on how great we are as people and how much we struggle. No, God wants to help us with that. God wants to use what you're going through in order to strengthen you. And I hated when people would tell me that because in the heat of the moment, all I was thinking was, this is never going away. I don't understand why I have to go through it. And this is just the worst thing on the entire planet. No. I received healing from it. And with anxiety, I will receive healing from it. It's just a matter of God's timing, because God knows truly what will make me the strongest. God knows you better than anyone. So the battles you're going through, I heard this all the time, is God won't put you in a situation you can't handle. And it might hurt, and it might be so hard, and the devil might convince you that you need to give up. But let me tell you, when the devil's telling you to give up, that means God really has something for you. If right now your mindset is, I can't keep going, then you have no idea how much God is about to do in your life. You just gotta fix your eyes on the path ahead of you. I don't remember what that verse was, but fix your eyes on the word. Fix your eyes on what God has for you, because then those loud voices in your head and the loud voices of the world, they're not going to be able to penetrate. So something I had been praying about is, I was like, God, I still feel like I have one last thing I want to tell the students. On top of all of the little tangents that I went on, I still feel like I have one thing that I don't know yet. What do I have? What do you have for the youth students in this room tonight? And something that came up was, receiving healing isn't always easy. See, in psychology, there's this thing, and it's called what is it called? It's like you're in learned pain. You're in a position where what you're struggling with, it's comfortable for you. Whether or not you want to be in that, I remember that I was in a point where I was like, yeah, depression sucks, but getting my hopes up to be healed and then failing again feels like it'll be worse. It's a lot easier to stay in a place of comfortable pain. And the devil will be like, yeah, this is way more comfortable. It's way more comfortable. Even though all you want is to be healed, it's really comfortable and it's really easy to stay there. Because you can say, woe is me. I will never be healed. But that's not the truth. It might not be easy, but it's what God has for you. A lot of the times, and this is what even recently, I really like the fact that I can still tie in things that I'm learning into the messages that I'm giving you, is, for me, it was really, really hard to step out of that place of pain because it was so uncertain. And I felt like, oh man, but it's been this long, so I would have been healed by now. No, God operates out of time. He is not in time. And so the first thing you have to do in order to get out of that place of pain, in order to get out of that place where you own this, I am depressed, I have anxiety. No, you don't. You have to take that first step. You have to take a step and go to him. For me, that leap of faith, that first step was asking God, please open my heart and soften my heart to what you have for me. Because I was in this place where I was like, God will not heal me because he hasn't already. It's been most of my life since I've struggled with anxiety, and I'm only 18, so I guess that's not really a long time. And big, there's a word there, but I don't know what it is. In the reality of things, I'm only 18. But most of my life is still most of my life. That's what I know. And so that hardened my heart. I had let those years of Satan being like, you'll never be healed. I let that get to me. And so my leap of faith looked like asking God, please soften my heart to what you have for me. Whereas some other people might be like, God, heal me. I believe. And healing. Not all of our stories are going to look the same. Sometimes it's a process. But the number one thing is God is with you in that. And God has something for you through that process. He's willing and able. But because we are humans, it can be a process. Because of the world we live in and the pain that we experience, because our minds are the way that they work, is we will think about pain before the outcome of possible joy, because it's not 100% sure that we will get out of this. Right? Because it's like, oh, well, there's like a 50% chance that I'm going to be healed. That's a big chance. So taking that step is so important. And literally my last point was at 0.0 seconds. But yeah, that's all I have for y'all.